Welcome everyone. We're going to be talking about the most common Drupal site building pitfalls and how to avoid them. First, a little bit about me. Hi, I'm David Snopek. I'm the maintainer or co-maintainer of 20 plus projects on Drupal.org. I'm the co-organizer of the Drupal 414 meetup in Milwaukee. If you're ever in the area, we're the third Thursday of the month. We have the best food at any meetup. The other co-organizer, Steve, he makes home-cooked food for every meetup. It's really great. I'm a member of the Drupal security team. I'm co-founder of myDropWizard, a Drupal support maintenance company. We'll talk a little bit about that because it sort of pertains to the presentation. And my most important role, I am Tata to my two wonderful daughters who are pictured here having a snuggle. I couldn't decide which picture to use because it's like in one of them Sasha's smiling and then here this one Ava's smiling. I don't know, I had to make an animated GIF. So right off the bat, please ask questions. My goal is to have this presentation be understandable for advanced Drupalers, intermediate Drupalers, people who are just starting using Drupal. There's so much stuff that I don't know that I might be sliding past. So if there's something you don't understand, please ask. And maybe real quick so I can try and adjust my presentation to you guys, who here would consider themselves a master Drupal site builder? Who would consider themselves like middle of the road, like you're not a master yet, but you're certainly not a beginner? Cool. And do we have any like absolute beginner site builders? Sweet. Awesome. Especially you guys. If I say a Drupal thing that I assume everyone knows, like, call me out on it. So before we dig into the pitfalls, these are the most common. How do I know that they're the most common? Well, myDropWizard does support and maintenance for sites we didn't build. We don't do any site building. We just take on support for other people's sites. So we know from experience what makes a site difficult to maintain. Beyond our actual customers, we also do an in-depth site audit before taking on any new customer. So we've done loads of site audits for people who eventually didn't opt to become customers. In 2016 alone, we did 64 site audits. So we have seen a lot of Drupal sites. We've seen everything, all sorts of ways of doing it right and a million ways of doing it wrong. So Drupal 8 came out a year and a half ago now, and it's the new hotness. Everyone's talking about Drupal 8. Just right off the bat, are we only going to be talking about Drupal 8? Nope. myDropWizard supports Drupal 6, 7, and 8. We're one of the 3 companies blessed by the Drupal security team to continue supporting Drupal 6. And it turns out that all of these bad practices are perfectly portable to all Drupal versions. A Drupal module, isn't portable for 6, 7, 8. Well, these pitfalls certainly are. So real quick, just to lay some ground rules for the types of pitfalls we're going to be talking about. Only things related to site building. If you're unfamiliar with this term, it's a sort of Drupal-y thing. A site builder is a person who installs Drupal, installs modules, and configures them to build a new site. So not someone who's primarily concerned with creating new modules, writing module code, not someone who's primarily concerned with design. Of course, you can do all the things, but the site builder hat is just installing Drupal, configuring modules. We're going to be looking at things that affect the long-term maintenance of the site and the security of the site. In my opinion, the security is very important to the long-term maintenance of the site. If one day you wake up and someone's replaced your whole website with pictures of cats or ads for penis pills or has taken your site offline and is extorting you to put it back online, like that affects the long-term maintenance. We're going to be talking about things that affect how easy it is to quickly make changes or improvements, and things with specific, concrete, actionable solutions. Like I could say complexity makes a site difficult to maintain. It makes it hard to quickly make changes. But like, what's the solution to complexity? Build simpler sites. So we're only going to be talking about very specific, very concrete things and the specific actions that you can take to fix them. And we're going to be talking about things that apply to all Drupal site builds, not specific solutions. Like I could probably give a whole presentation on how to make maintainable sites with panels, like how to not make mistakes there, because I love panels. I do a lot of stuff with panels, but we're not going to be talking about a specific approach to Drupal site building, but all Drupal site builds. And unfortunately, the list of things we're going to be looking at is kind of a grab bag. I made this presentation by going through all of the site audits that we did in 2016 and like tallying up the things that we found that I would consider like mistakes that the site builder made. And the 7 that floated to the top, that's what we're talking about. So it's going to seem totally random. We're going to talk about one thing and then a totally other thing, and I apologize for that. It's what happens when you base a presentation on data. You guys ready? Sweet. So the first one we're going to be talking about is unapplied security updates. And I feel kind of bad having this as a pitfall, because like we all should know if there's a security update, we should at some point apply that, right? But almost all of the sites that we audited had unapplied security updates. I think we maybe have audited like 4 sites lifetime where they had all the updates in place. So even though we all should know this, for some reason we don't do it. And this puts you or your customers or their customers at risk, right? You know, if your customers have an e-commerce site that you built for them or are maintaining for them, whatever, and all of their customer credit card data gets stolen, you know, that reflects badly on your customer, it reflects badly on you. And in myDropWizard, we apply all security updates the same day. That is super aggressive. You don't have to do that. What I would recommend is getting informed about how the security update process works, how to read the security advisories, and coming up with some routine. It doesn't have to be apply them the same day. It could be you look at the criticality of the reports, and one's over a certain level you do in the first 48 hours, and the rest you do once a month, or whatever it is. Have some sort of routine in place and do them eventually. So if you're not on top of them, how to get there? Be vigilant on Wednesdays afternoon Eastern time. That's when all Drupal security updates are published. All the security advisories are at drupal.org/security. There you'll see like the core security advisories. There's a tab to see the ones for contrib modules and themes. I wrote a series of blog posts a while back on how to understand the security advisories, the different information they include, specifically like what are the types of vulnerabilities and what do those mean, what do the different levels of criticality mean, so that you have the tools to read those advisories and be able to make an educated decision like, do I need to apply this immediately, or maybe could I wait? Of course, I would never recommend to anyone wait, because if I recommend that, then I'm wrong, and you get hacked, like that would really suck. But in the realities of the real world, we don't have infinite time, so sometimes those decisions need to be made, just as long as you're making them educatedly. So other than just hitting reload constantly on Wednesdays, there are emails that go out to sign up for the security announcement emails. Edit your account on Drupal.org. If you're a new person and you don't have an account on Drupal.org, please make an account on Drupal.org. You can edit your account. There's a My Newsletters tab, and there's a checkbox for getting the security announcements. Click Save, and now you will get emails as soon as any of the security advisories come out, which is great for seeing things as they come. If you want to see all the things that affect your site currently, install the update module, which is installed by default but maybe got disabled, and check out the available updates report, and it'll list all of the modules on your site that need security updates. Any questions regarding that particular pitfall?
Just real quick on the sites that you host and you support, do you have a scripted way or an automatic way to apply those updates, or do you have an engineer involved in touching each one?
It's partially automated. So not to like get way too deep into what we do, but we gather like a set of critical use cases that are like the most important things that the site needs to do, and if they stopped working, like it's an emergency, right? And we document those and either check them manually if they're complicated in some way, or we have BHAT tests that test them automatically. So a mix of scripts and human labor. Any other questions before we move on? Cool. Multiple copies of the same module at the same layer. No one in this room knows what that means except for me, so I will explain it with a story. So you are a Drupal site builder. You've installed the Google Analytics 2.2 module, and to do that, you put it in the Sites All Modules Google Analytics directory. A security release comes out, the 2.3 module. So you want to test if the new version works with your site. So rather than deleting the old Google Analytics directory, you've renamed it to Google Analytics old, and then put the new module at the location that the old one was at, right? You do some testing on your site, everything seems to be working fine, so you're done, right? Unfortunately, no. So the module directory, the name of the directory, Drupal doesn't care. It doesn't even look at that. What Drupal looks for when it's trying to find what modules you have in your Drupal code base is it looks for the .info or .info.yaml file. .info.yaml is Drupal 8, .info for 6 or 7. So if you have both these .info files, one at Google Analytics-old / Google Analytics.info and another one just at Google Analytics, the one that Drupal actually chooses to use to be that module on your site, there's no telling which one it is. It could have chosen either one, and it could change its mind later at any time. And the things that cause it to change are super mysterious, like an operating system update, or a new version of PHP, or like different changes on the file system. So the fallout is unexpected things can happen later for like no apparent reason. Like you would have fixed this bug months ago, and all of a sudden it came back. What happened? Or doing updates can be problematic. If you update the module at sites all modules Google Analytics, but Drupal's actually using the other one, the update you think you made may not have actually happened. So don't keep multiple copies of the same module, same layer. We have a script to find those. It's so prevalent. Like this is one of the first things we do for any site that we onboard because it's on a lot of sites. A side note, it's okay to have multiple copies of a module at different layers. I'm calling them layers. So Drupal can have multiple modules directories. Like you can have a sites all modules, Google Analytics module, and then if your site is example.com, you can have sites, example.com modules, Google Analytics, and the second one overrides the first one. And that's actually a feature. That's not a bug. Like Drupal does that on purpose. But it's still super confusing. So like if you don't actually need that feature, try to only keep the module in your code base once, and it'll just be easier on you for the future. Any questions for Santa Cat?
I think we kind of covered kind of echoing what you said, even though, and especially if you're running if you're not running multi-site, put yourself in that situation that you've got something on their site's call, and then you've got something on your site name.
Mm-hmm.
Just creates a whole bunch of confusion, and you can actually query the database to figure out which one it actually is running. But I've run into situations just like you where I will support sites, and I'm like, oh, nice. So we've got this module in 2 different layers, like you're saying, and I've seen it too, where it's on the same layer. And I kind of feel like, even if it's on separate layers,
Yeah. I mean, we have a script to try and help us not make this mistake, but it's no reason to make life harder for yourself. Right? And any other questions before we move on?
Are you
Or comments?
going to how to uninstall the modules?
No, I'm not talking about that. Although that's another thing.
That's another thing,
Yeah.
That you run into after .50.
Yeah, so if you remove a module from the site code base without uninstalling it first, that can also create some problems, yeah.
Well, you just end up with a bunch of warnings that drive you crazy.
Yeah, and the reason the warnings are there is because it's a performance thing. Like, if Drupal doesn't find it, it'll like scan through all of the files and try to find it
It's still
on
in the
every
database
request.
even though it's not there.
Yeah. So that didn't make the cut for our list, but that is legitimately like a site building pitfall for sure.
Yeah.
Anything else before we say goodbye to Santa Cat? Okay. So the third pitfall, unorganized module patches. So Drupal is open source, and that's awesome, because that means if you need a new feature or want to get a bug fixed, you don't have to wait for the vendor who created it to fix it for you. You can either modify the module code yourself or patch it, which is the word we'll be using for the rest of this, or download patches that other people have created to fix problems or add features off of Drupal.org. But if your site depends on patches, this can actually be kind of dangerous, because if you update a module and forgot that you had patched it, it will wipe out the changes that you made. And so you'll do this update, something will stop working, and you'll say, oh, how did that happen? Where did that feature I remember implementing Go. Also, patches may need to be changed for new versions. So a new version of the module comes out, the old patch no longer applies, then it needs to be updated. So the solution to that is to organize the way that you patch Drupal. The absolute minimum thing you could do is to put all of the modules that you have patched in a separate directory. So like, let's say you normally put your modules at sites all contrib. Any of the ones you patched, you can move them into sites all modules patched. And that doesn't help you with the actual work that you need to do to do the update and reapply the patches, but you at least know that there's work for you to do. So that's the absolute minimum that you can do. You could also create a special directory where you have all of your patch files. You could make a text file with like a list of URLs pointing to the patch files on Drupal.org if you're using patches from Drupal.org. Or you could create a build file, like for Drush make or composer.json, that will apply the patches for you. And we'll talk about that in a moment. So Drush make, which works for Drupal 6, 7, and 8, which is the reason we use it, because it works for all of those versions. You basically make a .make text file with the names of the modules that you want, their version number, and a list of the patches. Here is an example. So like this says we want the panels module version 3.8 and apply this patch. And then you run this kind of arcane command, don't worry about it, just run it, that will download panels at that version and try to apply that patch. So when you want to install panels 3.9, you'd go in here, change that to be 3.9, run it again, and it'll download the next version and try to apply that patch again. And if it can't apply the patch for some reason, it will error out completely and do nothing, right? So it won't leave your site in an inconsistent state. Like it won't download 3.9 but not apply the patch. It will just not even move it up from 3.8, if that makes sense. And if you have like 20 modules in there, same deal. Any error, it completely errors out, tells you there's a problem, and doesn't change your site, doesn't put it in an inconsistent state. An alternative tool for doing the same thing is Composer. So Composer is a generic PHP tool for installing PHP stuff. You have a composer.json file that lists everything you want to install, so similar to the .make file we saw before. In Drupal 8, there's certain modules that you have to install with Composer anyway. So if you're doing only Drupal 8 stuff, you're probably already using Composer. So there's a cool Composer plugin that you can use to also put your patch files in your composer.json file and then automate it in the same way. Yeah, someone can say something? Oh, sorry, thought I heard someone speak up. Please ask questions if you have any questions. So all of that is great, like, to keep track of your patches as you go, but like, what if you've been applying patches for the last year and have no recollection of all the things that you did? You can use the hacked and diff modules. So hacked will compare the module code on your site with the official download, and if you have diff installed, it'll actually generate a patch for you. So if you're totally behind, you can just copy and paste the patch that hacked gives you and say that's your patch. And we actually have a script that we use to generate a .make file for all of our customers when we're onboarding them, because again, this is super prevalent. Yeah?
So, when you're doing with Composer then, do you just run, is it Composer update is what you end up running? Or you're doing a Composer install?
To be honest, I'm not sure.
Okay.
So does anyone have experience using Composer with patches?
Composer install will install based on your .block file, whereas Composer update will actually update based on the version constraints you define in Composer.json.
So then probably you'd have to do a Composer update if you added a patch, I would guess.
It will apply on install. So it removes the code, re-downloads it, and then applies the patch.
Okay, so you could actually use either one and still do it with a patch
If you're doing
workflow.
an actual deployment, you would want to use Composer install.
Okay.
So like the patch with that plugin will get into the .lock file?
I forget exactly.
I hope it does, I
I think
guess.
it's in composer.log. It'll say patches applied and note the patches applied.
Cool. Any other questions about organizing patches or? Yeah.
Where would you recommend keeping that data?
So we keep it in a dot file, like we make a dot directory at the root, and that's like sort of cover your ass type behavior, because we don't know if that file makes its way onto the client's actual site. Like, we don't want it to be accessible, and we know that dot files won't get opened by Apache or Nginx. So I don't know if anyone else has any other recommendations.
You just call it like dot patch modules dot make or whatever.
So we make a dot directory called .myDropWizard, and then we just hide stuff in there, which theoretically shouldn't ever be deployed to the client site, but just in case by some freak accident it is, like, we don't want it to be accessible to the internet. Any other questions or comments before we move on? Cool. So unnecessary patching. That whole last point was about all of the extra accounting and work that you have to do if you patch stuff. So the easiest way to avoid that work is to not patch stuff. If there's ever a way to accomplish what you wanted to accomplish without patching, then do it that other way. Don't patch. Luckily, Drupal provides a whole bunch of ways to alter the appearance of your site or the functionality of your site without having to patch. 99% of the patches that we see on our customer sites are totally unnecessary. Like, they could have done them without patching. And they usually address one of three things. They're either making some arbitrary CSS change to the CSS file in a module, changing the HTML in a template, or altering a form. There's certainly lots of other reasons to patch stuff, but this is at the top of the heap of what we see site builders doing. So how do you customize without patching? You can customize Drupal from inside of either a custom module or a custom theme. Almost all Drupal sites have a custom theme. It's really rare to see a Drupal site that's using like a contrib downloaded theme. Definitely there's lots of themes on contrib that get used, but usually they're used as like your custom theme is using the contrib theme as a base theme. So almost all Drupal sites have a custom theme. For people who are not super familiar with Drupal, and to remind me to stop and say things for people who aren't super familiar with Drupal, the theme is what makes the appearance of your website unique, right? The modules provide the functionality, the theme provides the look and feel. Most non-developers are more comfortable doing things in the theme rather than a module, so we're going to talk about how to stick these types of customizations into your theme. You probably already have one anyway, so let's use it. CSS changes. So if the patch that you want to add would only make some minor change to CSS, you can just add a new CSS rule to whatever CSS you have in your theme. CSS is cascading style sheets, so later things override older things, and the theme CSS always comes after the module CSS. If you need to make a major change to the CSS in some Drupal module, you can copy that whole CSS file to your theme and then register it in a special way, and whenever Drupal wants to display the original CSS file, instead it'll take yours. And the way that you register that in Drupal 6 or 7 is by adding this one line to your theme.info file, so the name of your theme.info, then you add this line with the name of the CSS file. The name of the file has to be the same as it was in the module. That's how Drupal knows that you want to replace that original file with this new one. So you just add that to your theme, clear your caches, and Drupal starts serving your new file. And there's a link in the slides. All the slides are linked off of the MidCamp website. But there's some more details in the official docs. In Drupal 8, to do the same thing is crazy complicated. And I almost didn't actually cover it. I was going to just like give up and like put a link and say like, oh, I'll go do that. But if I'm telling people that they should do this, that this is legitimately better, like I can't cop out. I got to tell you guys how it's done. So we're going to dig into it. We're going to talk about how that is done. So in Drupal 8, all CSS is registered in libraries, which go in a, whatever the name of the module is, .libraries.yaml file. So if you want to override one of those files, first you need one of the CSS files. First you need to find the libraries file, open it up, and look for the library that has the CSS file that you care about. So if we want to replace the node.preview.css file, we would go look in the node.libraries.yaml file and try and find that CSS in there. So here's the excerpt from that file. And here we found our CSS, so that's how we know that we care about this. And then this is the name of the library, which we also need to know. So then we go to our themes.info.yaml, so the name of the theme.info.yaml, and we add this libraries override section. It's in the node module, so we say node/the library ID, which came from the previous slide, right? It's this one up at the top. We're overriding CSS, so we have the CSS keys, libraries, and also JavaScript. This next part, theme, is the type of CSS file, which we have to get from over here, because there's multiple types. So you have to make sure that it's the same type. And then this last part is the name of the file as it was in the library, and then the name of the file as it is in your theme. In this case, we named it the same thing, so it's actually more confusing. But yeah, you add that, clear your caches, and then Drupal starts serving that file. Like, I sincerely hope that this is improved later in later versions of Drupal. This is like a crazy amount of busy work. Like,
So if you're naming it the same thing here, how does it know it?
so this path is relative to the modules directory, and this path is relative to your themes directory. So it's under the module directory /CSS/this, and then here it's under the theme directory /CSS. But yeah, for the most part, working in Drupal 8 is way easier and more fun than working in Drupal 7, and this is ridiculous. I hope that it gets fixed later. I hope that someone makes a tool to make this easier, because it seems ridiculous to expect site builders to try and get all the different pieces of information and line it up, and I want Drupal to be awesome, so I hope it's fixed later. Anyway, any more questions about that? Okay, we'll give Sleepy Cat a break. So if you need to make HTML changes to your site, in Drupal 8, all HTML comes from .html.twig templates. In Drupal 6 and 7, most HTML comes from .tpl.php files. It could also come from something called theme functions, but that's sort of a minority of stuff. Don't worry about that. To override one of these templates, you can just copy it from the module and put it in your theme/templates directory. Change it however you want to change it, and then clear caches. And it will start using your HTML rather than the module's original. So you don't have to patch. And this one is really easy compared to the last one. Any questions or comments about that? So form alterations. This is definitely the most developer-y topic we're going to talk about. But it seems that site builders really do want to change their forms, so we're going to dig into it a little bit. Forms in Drupal are created with special PHP arrays. So in order to customize a form, you will need to learn like a tiny bit of PHP syntax, particularly how to make PHP arrays. A module creates the original form array, and then any other module or theme can alter that array in PHP code. Yeah, so again, this is the most developer-y thing we're going to talk about. So we're going to try and figure out what is the cheateriest way to do it. So the first thing is we need to figure out what is the ID of the form. And you can figure that out by going to the page with the form in your web browser and looking at the HTML source for this hidden input, name, form ID, and then this value is what we're looking for. So this is the Drupal login form, and the form ID is this user_login. And then you're going to install the devel module, which, if you're doing this on your live site, never leave the devel module installed on your live site. It can be okay to install it to do some debugging there if necessary, but always uninstall it and remove it afterwards. It's not, it doesn't have any security vulnerabilities, the devel module itself, but if you have other security vulnerabilities on your site, an attacker could use it to escalate their privilege. So just be aware of that. And then we are going to edit or create the template.php file if it's a 6 or 7 site, or the theme.theme file in Drupal 8. And if the file doesn't exist, you need to create it. Be sure to put this curly bracket question mark PHP thing as the first line. And we're going to be adding a function to this file that's named like the name of the theme, underscore form, underscore the form ID. So like in our example, it was user login underscore alter. And here's an example of what that would look like. And we're just going to put like one special thing inside of it, this DSM form, which is using the devel module to print out what the form array looks like. So add this code, clear your Drupal caches, reload the form, and you'll get this cool like interactive thing that lets you drill down into this form array so you can see what's there and what we have to change. So we're going to change the username, which we found underneath name, pound title, and replace it with something else.
I'm sorry, can you go back to that?
Sure.
Can you, that seems really cool and helpful. Can you explain? I've not really used Drupal at all. Can you explain a little bit, like, where does that, is that just built in, or is that a module?
So that's from the devel module. That's why,
okay.
yeah, that's why we installed devel earlier, and then it just like pretty prints out arrays in this cool interactive thing.
So we could use that to find, like, if I was going to do some theming, I could find out like what fields are available using that as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're doing Drupal 8, there's like some cool twig functions that you can get from modules. I'm not a themer, so I'm not super familiar with that. Kint, yeah. But if you're in PHP code for whatever reason, the devel module can do this. Also, if you're like a hardcore developer, you probably should be using the debugger to get this information.
Okay.
But this is the cheater's way, because we're all cheaters. So now that we know the structure of the array, we're going to change we're going to take the form array, go to name, go to pound title, which we got from the last slide, and we're going to change it to nickname. And in this example, we've wrapped it in this T parentheses. That's considered best practice. It's necessary if you ever want to translate your site to a different language. If you know it's never going to be in another language ever, you could just put the name, and that's fine. But if you think you might later, definitely put the T around it. Then we reload the page, and look, it says nickname, and we didn't have to patch Drupal or any modules anywhere.
One thing that I was going to say about T, even if you know that you are never going to need to translate your site, T helps you out by running some stuff like check. T can help you so that you will get. I know you're saying you're doing the form alteration, and there you were putting in a literal string.
Right.
But maybe the form alteration they want to do, they're actually taking some user input to substitute for something else, and by running it through T, that helps you to escape things, so you don't get cross-site scripting happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're going to be doing PHP code that's more than just like literal changes like that, you're doing something that's kind of like lightweight Drupal development, and to be safe, you should learn a little bit about Drupal development and specifically like what to do to write secure code. But most of the stuff that we've seen, which I'm trying to address here, is like the real simple, like changing the size of an input field or changing the name or that sort of thing. And any other questions or comments? Yeah?
What's the advantage of doing the form alter in theme rather than the module?
So there isn't really any. I mean, it depends on how you're organizing your site. If you have a module whose job is to provide like a certain like coherent piece of functionality, like I don't know, the profile stuff. Like if you have a module that's like doing all of the profile customizations for your site, it would make sense to put a form alter that has to do with profiles in your module also for like organizational purposes. If you have a site where there's multiple themes in use, so you want the customization to come through in both themes, maybe you want to put it in the module. it really depends on the specific situation. Here, like in this context, it's just, you have a theme, and what's the easiest way that you can make this customization. So, any other questions or comments? Cool. Now we're going to be talking about security for a little bit.
I was just going to tell you guys, it's 206.
Yeah.
You might somebody to flag this week.
Oh, yeah.
9 minutes.
So, I guess I'll leave this up to you guys maybe, but I have enough stuff to talk about in this presentation, way past the limits of the presentation. But I'd really like to hear from you guys and your experience, if you have any other questions or other things you've seen on sites that are bad. I mean, I wouldn't mind just saying we stop with me espousing to you and switch to a conversation at this point, or if you're, the slides and stuff are on the MidCamp website. I also wrote a blog post on the myDropWizard blog that covers basically all the same stuff. So I won't be depriving you of any knowledge if you really want to learn it. I don't know. Do you guys want to have a conversation? Okay, cool. Real quick before we totally break, there was some administrative stuff at the end.
Were these ordered in a specific way, or?
Nope. No, because this is based on data, there isn't a grand conclusion at the end. It's just, here are these 7 things and how to solve them. And I apologize if that was mind-numbingly boring, but it's how it came together. But yeah, so before we switch to discussion, on Sunday there's a sprint. If you've never been to a sprint, they are super duper fun. Regardless of what your skills are, you could help out with code if you're a coder. You could help out just organizing issues in the issue queue. You could help out with ideas, with design, and collaborate with people and build relationships and learn stuff. So I highly recommend you come. And also, speaker evaluation, that short link will let me know what was good and what was bad and how I can improve. So please fill that out.
Where's the blog? Where's the blog?
Yeah, so mydropwizard.com, that's readable, crazy wizard font. /blog is where our blog is. And if you go now, it's the most recent thing. Yeah. Otherwise, it's called the same as the name of the presentation, so you could search it. So guys, any other important pitfalls you've seen that you want to share, or any other questions to the material that we've covered? Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to add something that maybe is not that common today, but it was maybe half a year ago when I find the case. We had a couple of clients who didn't upgrade to Drupal 7.5, and they were still running all versions. So, of course, their sites were all hacked because of all the people getting story.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of the first things we checked. We had a client saying, okay, I have the Drupal 7 site, but I'm not sure it's working properly, and even if it hasn't been directly exposed with new content or whatever the hackers want to do, it has these super clean accounts that you're going to get rid of, and that you notice that the site was actually hacked, and it's really like immigration. It's more like Indian that going through the sites again. They have 2 years since they haven't upgraded their report, so that's kind of all the checks we.
Yeah, we've seen customers who haven't updated a single thing since 2013 or something like that. Yeah. Does anyone know the version that Drupal get in was?
7.5.
Point 50?
No, it was
No.
34 or something.
32.
32? Okay. So if for whatever reason you have a Drupal site that's before 7.32, your site is very, very hackable in a very, very dangerous way, please check that out. There's a module, I think it's called Drupal Get In, that adds a drush extension to let you check for the common signs of your site having been hacked in Drupal Get In, and that's just looking for the things that they saw hackers doing, right? So it's not perfect. It could say your site is clean, but it's not. But it will catch the most common stuff, and you know if you have more work to do, I guess.
Is that usable across different versions?
What was that?
Is that usable across different versions?
So this particular vulnerability only affects Drupal 7. Otherwise, like there isn't a generic way to check, stay on top of the security updates, and then if you really think you might have been hacked and need some help, I guess contact an expert, a Drupal security expert, to try and take a deeper look. 7.32?
7.32.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the last bad one or the first one?
Good question.
That's the last bad one.
That was the last bad one, and then 33 fixed it. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so, well, I guess I should say first I'm not a developer, so my question isn't super technical, but I'm a strategist and I work in an agency where we'll take on Drupal sites that can support them that have been built by other developers. Something that we run into a lot is that we'll inherit a site that has some like intense custom modules that haven't been actively maintained or updated and have either they're inefficient or bad performance or they're vulnerable in certain ways that I don't always fully understand, but I have to explain to the client. And I wonder, when you run into situations like that, how do you handle that? How do you approach that? Because I'm sure that some of the sites you inherit have this problem as well.
Yeah. And actually, like, my favorite thing on earth is when we're doing a site audit and I can point to a security vulnerability on their site and be like, here, look, I can break into your site. But yeah, like custom code is definitely where most security issues are. There's some automated tools to try and help find stuff, but like really, like you just need to have a developer go through it. Like as far as helping the customer, we have like a series of plans, and below like a certain level, like we don't mess with their custom code. We'll advise them,
Exactly.
but yeah.
So you often advocate, well, if you take on a client, you're going to fix that, basically.
Yes.
You don't really develop sites, I guess that's
Yeah. But we will like fix stuff in their custom code,
Mm-hmm.
or do like super minor feature-y things in their custom code if they have a plan with us that includes dealing with their custom code.
Got it.
And like also in like the site audit process we do, part of it is also trying to make sure that they have they're going to get all the things they need from us. So like if a site has like 40 custom modules and they want to go on our lowest plan, and we're going to be like, guys, like we could do that, but like you need more help than that. So.
Thanks.
Okay. More questions or comments? Or are we on time now? Ooh, 2 minutes. One last question?
Are those your cats?
They're not my cats. I don't have any cats. I'm allergic to cats. Actually,
The girl's yours.
the girls are mine. The girls are mine. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thanks.